All right, indoor flying for commercial applications. This is an important application. In the module, you'll see a warehouse discussion item. Um, so participate in that. It's a 7.5 minute video. Watch the video and then, read through the question and try to come up with some of your own thoughts about this possibility, this application, drone application. Some of you may have had warehouse jobs before. You realize it's, especially as far as inventory or finding things, automating that whole process would be very helpful. So don't bother to try to click on video link above my face there, because that's not linked here. Okay, so carry on. Indoor flying is an important skill, different skill, especially for warehouse inventory, but for other reasons as well. I mean, there's other things. There's other possible applications where the indoor flying could be helpful. Obviously, indoors for a real estate promotion, trying to sell a property or whatever. Maybe home inspections, you'll need to do indoor inspections. Or I don't know if you ever thought about that, but every home should do an inspection just for the purposes of replacement value if the house burned down, Lord forbid, but or there was some kind of natural disaster. It's good to have a record of all that's there so that the insurance company knows what you have and what you own, instead of trying to come up with a list after everything's been destroyed, which is pretty hard because our memories. Let's see, other other indoor flying applications of weddings, graduation events, sporting events, movie making, maybe. So anyway, it's a different skill. That's my point. So what are the challenges for indoor drone operations? There are challenges and then there's benefits. One of the benefits is you don't need a license, don't need to register your aircraft. One of the challenges is there are more, generally speaking, there are more obstacles, and you do not have GPS. Generally, you do not have GPS signals. Now, sometimes, but sometimes they're very irregular and they can drop out, and then your drone is drifting. You think it's going to stay steady and it drifts. So that's a challenge, a big challenge. Confined spaces, noise. If you're trying to record audio at the same time as you're videoing, the drone noise is amplified by the fact that you're in a confined space. Low light situations, possibly. Possible that there would be electronic signals that might interfere with the controller drone operations. Ventilation, there may be some high-powered fans in the building that might cause your drone to drift or just distort the photography. And there's probably some others that we haven't thought about. And but so we need to take some extra care in operating within buildings. So industry sources have developed some strategies to reduce the risk. A proficient drone pilot will come up with their own rules as well as they go along and get some experience. But obviously, when you first start, like everything else, you just be very careful and take your time and just really spend some time thinking about evaluating. Before you launch that drone, you got to look around, inspect everything, and try to find the obstacles and take an evaluation of the risks involved and see if you can mitigate those risks somehow, right? So back to mission planning, an earlier lesson, we do want to know exactly what the customer wants. Are we just wandering around the facility, or does he want specific areas covered, etc.? Right? So whatever the task is, and you develop a plan for accomplishing that. Keep in mind situational awareness. Things may change between the time you survey the space and the time you actually get the drone out there. And again, think about what obstacles might be in your way. Take time to develop your situational awareness and minimize the risks, obviously, like any other flight, really. Okay, so I can only use an example of a Phantom Pro. Got a good camera. We would want to make sure its propeller guards were on. I mean, that's sort of obvious. It's going to reduce the flying time and all that stuff. But have you ever thought about this? What if the battery got low, and you lost connection with the controller? What have you programmed the drone to do? We've drilled it into your head over and over again. We've mentioned that. We want it to return to home, climb to an altitude, and then return to home. So if you forget to check that, it may try to climb to 300 feet inside a building. That's a bad idea, right? So you want to go back to the return to home settings and deselect return to home and select the other two options. There are two other options, generally speaking, for most drones, just landing where it is or to hover until you come and recover it. So you have to decide where you're at. I mean, if there's irregular floor, you wouldn't want it to get caught on a corner or something like that, crash. I mean, there's so many possibilities. If if you're going to just have it hover, that gives you an opportunity to get a little bit closer and possibly would very carefully grab the drone and recover it. Or if you get close enough, maybe you can reconnect with the drone. Anyway, you just don't want it to climb and do what you've probably set it for in the past. Return to home. So you need to do that research. Phantom Pro, it's right here, but it's not that. You might not have a Phantom Pro. So just consider that. That's a responsibility that you have. See, I think I have another slide for that. Oh, yeah, I do. Return to home, go to settings, return to home to hover instead of landing. Okay, also you want to consider what happens with the low battery. That may be another selection. Low battery may be a different selecting page than loss of connection. So you want to make sure that if it says, what do you do when they have a low battery? Yeah, don't really want it to climb. You would rather have it just set down where it is or hover. We're going through this pretty fast because, all right, the other thing is, and I know it's very specific to the DJI Phantom Pro, but still, all drones are going to have some kind of a setting that gives this information. I would turn off, at least the Phantom Pro and some of the other drones, you would have to probably going to have to turn off collision avoidance because you're probably going to need to get close to the wall or close to obstacles. And if it won't let you maneuver, you're not going to be able to fly up. Chances are, depending on the space. It's probably going to need to turn optical sensing off or desensitize it so it just forward to the front and back or maybe side to side, whatever. So just consider that. You might want to turn the radar on, and if they have one of those displays where you would know that you're getting close to something. Keeping all this in mind, this is just the DJI specific settings here. Set mode to attitude. That eliminates the GPS basically. That's what I'm saying here in this slide. Again, DJI Phantom Pro is somewhat obsolete, so every drone you're going to have to go through is trying to think through the possibilities here. And those kind of settings. So just remember, of course, this is like you piloting the drone through an indoor space. Obviously, if you're going to do autonomous inspections like that video that you're going to watch talks about, it sort of changes everything a bit because the warehouse is going to be built specifically so that a drone isn't going to have obstacles. It's going to be able to fly along a specific path and not have things just wires or cables or things just hanging from the ceiling. All right, so we'll keep on going here. Attitude mode or ATTI mode disables GPS. Take note, drone will tend to wander, of course, without GPS lock. So that's why we have to learn how to fly without GPS. That's what the telos were when we first learned how to fly here at the classroom. We used the telo so that we would learn. You weren't thinking about it at the time, but that was what I was teaching you, is that you can maneuver without GPS, because we do have a tendency to get dependent on GPS, but there are certain circumstances, like indoor flying, where you don't have GPS. Visual positioning, that's specific to this particular drone. Not all drones will have this, but that will tend to maintain certain distance from the ground and from certain other obstacles. We have sensitivity setting in most of these drones, and that's over on this side. Let me get my pen out here. That's over on this side here. We don't normally mess with this, but you can change it so that if you have a straight line across, like in the throttle here, look at the throttle. Looking at this one. You have a straight line as you touch the control, it'll be, and you push the stick just a little bit, it'll be as much as if you were pushing it full scale. Well, no, that's not a very comfortable way to do it. You want it to gradually accelerate. But more importantly, is rotating and forward and back, you want it to be gradually start so that you can just gradually bump the control just a little bit, and just bump the control just a little bit so that it'll slowly move in the direction you want. Does that make sense? So we're talking about the sensitivity of the control, and it's in throttle up and down, rotation, rudder, yaw, and forward and back flight. So most drones will have that option to change that. If you're, the first example here with a throttle like that, that's what you want for FPV because you're racing around going really fast. You want to stop real quick. That's what you'd want. But for normal cinematic, that's all the cinematic settings do is that they change those sensitivity levels to make it a little smoother. But you can make it even smoother yet. That's not the limit. Cinematic could be even smoother than cinematic. Also want to be aware of auto shut off, emergency stop mode. If you do get tangled up in something, it could be a net or a wire gets caught in the propeller blades. You don't want it to be humming away at full speed and tearing it up, tearing machinery up. We want to be able to stop the props immediately. Or it's possible that somebody wanders into the space where you're taking pictures and there looks like the blade's going to cut the person. You'd want to shut the motors down immediately. So you want to be aware, whatever the emergency stop mode things are, depending on your drone, maybe a little different. This is just an example. You'd want to find this setting that just stops the blades from moving. Of course, you do realize your drone will now fall to the ground, but if you're not that high, it's not going to do any damage, and it may be better that your drone fall to the ground than the liability involved in breaking something or hurting somebody. Always liability to consider. Okay, so those are just some hints about indoor flying. Again, don't need to register the aircraft. You don't need to have a license or a certificate. But you want to do some planning ahead, thinking through the process, thinking about all the settings that you want to make sure. Check your settings and make sure it's not going to do some kind of crazy climb to altitude maneuver. Be aware that you may most likely not have GPS signal, so it's going to be some drifting. Be aware that the collision avoidance may actually interfere with the operation. You won't be able to get close enough to the wall, or if it's a restrained narrow area that you want to fly between, it won't let you do that. Of course, Skydio and there's some other drones that are made just for this purpose that have more refined collision avoidance that allows you to get pretty close to obstacles and not freak out. Some drones are like, wow, you're 4 feet away from it, it'll stop moving, and that can be irritating. There just needs to be a way to change that so that you're allowed either turning it off or checking it. So that's about it I have for commercial applications. So go to the fire warehouse discussion, watch the video, make some entries in the discussion, and I'll grade you for participation on that. But there's no quiz on this particular skill set. Thank you.